Hey everyone! Welcome back. I am back today with my final batch of Steel Ball Run manga reviews, you guys. It is very bittersweet to be here. On the one hand, I am so thrilled to see how this wraps up and to share it with you and to end this phase of my JoJo journey before we move on to part 8, of course, which I'm very excited about. But on the other hand, it's like I'm gonna miss, well, I don't know if any of them are gonna show up, you know, in later parts, but I'll miss this, you know, like I enjoyed this. I loved where we were at in this one, and I just have so much to say about it, you guys. I will try to be as succinct as possible, and I probably will end up making a separate video kind of discussing a little bit more, like once you know, I've had a little bit more time to let it breathe and everything. Maybe like do like a kind of a wrap up. I'm thinking of doing a tier list just for Steel Ball Run, which I think is a really cool idea. And yeah, so before I get into it, because we do have a lot to get into, as you can probably see from the title, we are not just doing 5 chapters today. We are going to have a half chapter, and I'll explain why in a second. But before I do all that, I do just want to say, if you're joining me early today, you know just what that means. It means you are one of my awesome patrons. Thank you so very much. And as always, I am sending up those big old hugs right through that screen. And if not, still thank you for joining me today. I am glad you're here. I do hope you'll consider supporting me that way. The link to my Patreon is going to be in that description down below. And if you're joining me on the YouTubes, I really hope you'll hit like and subscribe for me. It helps me and my channel a whole lot. So thank you in advance for that. Okay, so it came to my attention very recently that there is a half chapter that was not included for some reason in the fan translation that I was reading online for Steel Ball Run. It's way back between chapters 11 and 12. I mean, we're really going back, but it coincides with some of what I was asking, like back when, I forget the exact chapter where we got to know like what really happened between Steven Steele and Lucy in the past. And I kind of wondered, like, when I read that, I'm like, remember how he was like really downtrodden and she cheered him up, and that's why he went to go and like thank her and everything. I'm like, I wonder what had happened to him. That feels like maybe there's a bigger story behind that. Are they going to tell it at some point? And it came to my attention that they did tell it at one time, and for whatever reason this half chapter was just not included. So I have the half chapter here today, and honestly I was gonna tack it on to the end. I have so much to say about the end that I kind of feel like maybe I'll just start with 11.5. I think it'll be easier. I know we left off in a really precarious position last time with Dio, with Zawurldo, with what on earth is going on. No one knows. No one knows how he has Zawurldo, okay? If you know, let me know, because as far as I know, why wouldn't he have Zawurldo? Why wouldn't he So, we had a lot going on last time. I will recap some of that after I go through chapter 11.5 and before we're about to jump into chapter 91. How does that sound, okay? Because thematically, I think that would just fit better. But really quick, chapter 11.5 is an itty-bitty, like 9-page chapter telling about the past of Steven Steele. They start out telling about how he fell in love at the age of 15. And of course, the girl he fell in love with looks exactly like Lucy. Before they even said it, I was like, oh my God, that has to be intentional, right? So apparently she died in a carriage accident, so he decided to join the cavalry out of like grief and everything. He ended up getting typhoid fever and was hospitalized for 2 years. He never actually got to do like anything there, I think was the indication. But they do give us really cool timeline, which will be in the screenshots of like all the things he did leading up to the Steel Ball race. And guys, this guy has quite the resume / sordid past. So apparently he has a talent for making goldfish come out his nose. It's just like a really, I mean, you thought Giorno's ear thing was weird? Giorno's ear thing is so normal compared to this. Like, honestly, I don't know how Araki thinks of these. I would say that, except after learning about the bug bite thing, I'm like, you know what? I don't think we are truly privy to what this man is capable of in his mind, and so I think we should just sit back and just enjoy the show. So he joins the circus. They mention like he this is actually like not very good, but like he dresses like an Asian person, which I'm like, oh my goodness, a lot of that happened back then, you guys, just so you know. It's not okay, but it was normalized back then. This is a thing that happened. But he did this whole like act and routine and joined the circus and was like super popular in the circus, I guess. And then that falls through and he became a bouncer. He became a debt collector, or no, not a bouncer, a boxer. I wrote it wrong. Oh my God. I'm like, that doesn't sound right in my head. He became a boxer. And then he becomes a debt collector, and apparently he got angry and just like threw a match that he was a part of as a boxer, and decided to like just beat the heck out of the guy instead of doing what he was supposed to do, I guess. So then he like disappears, and then he comes back to San Francisco, and he kind of like becomes a promoter, and he gets rich off that, and he buys a mansion. But then there's like this story that gets out that's kind of like I guess it's like a hoax or something, and he gets blamed for it even though it wasn't his story, and he ends up losing everything. And it's just like his whole story is just like ups and downs. It's like, oh my God, talk about like, I mean, if you want to do a documentary on this guy, it would be really interesting. So he's in despair, and he's thinking about, he gets this idea to organize like a long distance horse race, because he was never really able to like ride or do anything, I guess, in the cavalry when he was there. So apparently he was, knocking him back a little bit, and was at a bar and was talking about this. And he's afterwards, Lucy sees him, and she's like, you should do it, and you should make it like a cross country race, and you should do this huge prize money and all this stuff. And this is like when she went to him and comforted him when he was at his lowest. So we finally got the story behind like what it was. So he wakes up the next day after, I'm sure blacking out or whatever from what he had done previously. And he wakes up to a bunch of reporters surrounding him, and they're like, were you serious about that when you were talking about like the race and everything? Because they want to sponsor it. They're like, we know that the Age of Sports is coming, and this is going to be the next big up and coming thing, and like we want to do this with you. So it's again just like the pendulum swings one way or the other for him in terms of like his life and his ventures. So he goes to this is a little bit different than what he ended up coming in and saying later. But in this version, he goes to Lucy's home to find her and thank her, and she's actually there, and he sees her, and she looks just like his long-lost love, apparently, which we all knew. So he begs the dad to marry her no matter how long he has to wait for her, and Finn to chapter 11.5. So I thought this was really interesting for a couple of reasons. The third reason I'm going to get into later. It's going to be part of my wrap up, my outro. So put a pin in that. We have so many pins at this point. But two other interesting things. First of all, we do actually get to see like what was it that Lucy comforted him on? Like, what was that story? Because I kind of wondered that the whole time. The other thing is, it's interesting that Araki kind of ended up retconning this a little bit, and I'm kind of glad he did. And it sounds like he really wants to marry her. The way that they set it up, and maybe he did this on purpose to be able to come in and like be like, no, but it wasn't what you thought later. But in this, it sounds like she looks like his long lost love, and that's why he wants to marry her. And of course, we know in the version that comes much later, he married her to get her out of the situation that the dad was in with mafia and everything. It was a much more kind of platonic situation and done out of gratitude and not really... I mean, I do kind of like the idea that like one added thing about their connection was that she did remind him of this girl, but I don't really care to think of that in a romantic way. Like maybe that was just like one more thing that was like, oh, he really like... he knew that it was kind of meant to be that he found her again and helped her, as opposed to like, oh my God, this is just like my long lost love, and please let me marry her out of more conventional reasons for wanting to get married. Yeah, because in the version we see way later on, I'm pretty sure he doesn't see her. Somebody tell me if I'm remembering that right. Like, I'm pretty sure he goes, maybe he did see her. Maybe he went there twice. I don't know. I can't remember right now. But what I remember is that he goes to thank her, and the dad has, like, already sold her, basically. But I could be remembering that wrong, or, like, omitting something by accident, just because my brain doesn't brain all the time. And that's when he comes up with the idea that, like, okay, they're definitely gonna... I have my window open today, which I'm thinking was a really bad idea. But it's so nice out, and I had to do it, guys. I'm sorry. But, you know, we know that, like, he was trying to avoid anything happening to her and her, you know, because she was, you know. I'm not gonna say it with my windows open. We already went over it several chapters ago. So that was changed a little bit. And again, I don't know if Araki just decided he liked the new version better, which I think I kind of do. Or if he did it purposely to be like, oh, he kind of set it up to look like he really wanted to marry her, but we know that it was just to, like, help her / save her. I don't know, because I'm pretty sure it still goes down way differently in this version. But I do find it very interesting that we get to actually know, you know, how Stephen Steele came up with the idea of the race, what Lucy did to help him, and a lot of his past, and just like how he's been all over the place. And, you know, he really, in the later version, he seemed like a worldly man who knew the kinds of things that the type of people that took Lucy would be up to. And so this makes sense that, like, he had been in so many different professions, you know, some on the up and up, some not. And had seen a lot and was very well aware of, like, what was going to happen in that situation. So that was cool. I'm glad I read that. I'm glad we got that out of the way before, you know, like, just in time with the last batch and everything. Getting back to chapter 90, which is where we left off, of course, we know that it would appear that we are dealing with another dimensional Diego who has Zawurldo instead of scary monsters. And you know how this broke my brain. You understand, I explained it to you, how this broke my brain. And it's still, I have a lot better perspective on it now, I will tell you, after reading these chapters. But it's still, like, never explained. And the only thing I could think when I first read it was like, oh my god, is this Araki kind of coming around to the idea of incorporating things from the other universe into the story? And are we going to see things like this later on, you know? And I gotta be honest, I don't know about that. I don't know if this is just like a fluke, if it's just like, you'll see later on, but there are differences in these two Diegos. And I'm wondering if maybe this was just like the default way to show us that. Maybe. Instead of coming up with a whole other stand. You know what I mean? Because we already know Zawurldo. We like Zawurldo. We're comfortable with Zawurldo. All right, you guys. Chapter 91. Let's get into it. Last 5 chapters of this entire part. So as we left off before, we know Dio had stopped time. He threw the knives. It was such a callback. It was great. So these knives are headed right for Johnny, and Dio's saying that Johnny seems to be about the same in this world. He's kind of sizing him up. And we flash back to Valentine discovering this Dio and saying, like, he had been looking for him. And Valentine asked him to just please listen. So apparently this happened in one of the time. You know, we know that Valentine was going and trying to find other Valentines throughout this whole thing with the infinite rotation. So this happened during that time. He went and he sought out this Dio. And he says he can't win against these nail bullets, and this is his last request, so please just listen. So Dio's just being a jerk here. He's being so haughty and arrogant. And he's like, what, do you want me to get you a drink before you die or something? And I'm just like, oh, you're just such a jerk. And honestly, like, sometimes he's like kind of a funny, likable jerk, like almost like kind of like a Rohan, you know what I mean? Like, it's don't get used to that. Don't get used to it. Don't get used to the anti-hero thing, guys. I'm just warning you right now. So he asks Dio to recover the corpse in his place and says whoever owns it has good fortune. And Dio's like, all right, I'm listening, you know. Of course she's going to do anything that like benefits him. So he says that only the US can have it, and he's going on about like, wouldn't it be awful if somebody terrible in another part of the world got it, and like he's going on, he's very like glory, glory, hallelujah about this whole thing. You know how he gets about his napkin, about this country and everything, so yeah. And he's just, you'll see it in the screenshots, he's going on. So he tells Dio about the underground shelter. Did we cover yeah, I think we covered the underground shelter last time, right? I feel like I would have explained that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. If we didn't, we'll get there. I did so many in my schedule this week. I ended up like tripling up on reviews because of scheduling. And so now I'm like all messed up on like what I did when and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, yeah, he says only the U.S. can have it, and he tells him about the underground shelter, and we cut back to current, and Dio is explaining that Zawaldo can stop time for 5 seconds, which I forget where we left off. Where did we leave off with the time stop? Because why do I remember that, like, at one point, it was either Dio or Jojo that could do 9 seconds. Am I remembering that wrong? Because I feel like maybe it did go back to 5 seconds in, like, later parts when Jojo had it. I don't know. But he can stop time in this for 5 seconds, so we're just setting that precedent. So he resumes time, and of course Johnny starts getting stabbed by the knives. I don't think he was able to hide any books on his person like Jotaro, so he's just getting straight up stabbed. Dio's riding away, but Johnny fires at a telephone pole that makes the top half of the pole like fall towards Dio, like it's gonna fall on top of him. And he also makes the bullets travel along the ground to target Dio. And Dio's like, he's starting to be like, okay, he's pretty dangerous. Like, he actually knows what he's doing. And it's like, Sean. So, Johnny says it can't possibly be Dio, like he watched him die. But then Johnny's remarking how it seems like he has a totally different ability, almost like one that can stop time, which he figured that out very quickly. And he remembers that Valentine said he could bring Gyro back, and that's when he knows that Valentine must have done this. So he figures out that it's a Dio from a different dimension, basically. Johnny's looking for Dio and accidentally comes in 5th place in the 8th stage of the race. Like, at this point, I don't think Johnny or Dio are like even trying to win the race. Like, they're trying to get to that church. They're trying to get to the shelter and everything. Like, but the race is still happening. So if you're on a horse and you're riding through this area and you were registered for the race, you're in the race. So the announcer explains that the racers will all take ships to get across the bay for the next part. And after that, there's only about 20 minutes left to travel before they reach the finish line. Race placements are all going to be, it's the wrong side, in the screenshots and everything. I won't go through every single one, but they'll be on the screen. Apparently there's potential to win up to 70 million because the final stage alone is worth 10 million. Johnny's on his ship, and he's trying to get one of the workers to like get him there faster, and he offers to bribe him, but the guy has like no sense of humor about it. So Johnny's thinking back to Ringo, who also had a time ability, and this is when like it started to make more sense to me why Johnny figured it out so quickly, because as we know, like in part 3, it took a couple of people to really figure out what was going on. And here, of course, maybe it would occur a little bit more quickly to Johnny because they had seen a stand user that had a time ability already with Ringo. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if he planned it that way. I don't know if maybe that was a long game he was playing that was like, I'm going to introduce someone who has a time ability now, because then when I had to guess based on knowing our sensei, I would say I don't think there's any way that he knew he was going to do that. That's just my guess. I don't know that for sure. Maybe he really did plan it the whole way through. But it does kind of help make sense as to why Johnny was able to figure this out so quickly. So that's cool. So they finally get there. Oh my God, you guys are not ready. You're not ready for any of this, but I was not ready for this. I gasped when I read this. We finally get there, get off the ship, and we see that there's someone pushing through the crowd. It's Johnny's dad. And I'm like, what is his dad doing here? Okay, this part's actually kind of like gonna get me going. He holds up the boots. He looks at Johnny and he holds up the boots. Remember Nicholas's boots that like they had this big fight over he couldn't wear them, he didn't earn them, blah blah blah, like he couldn't take his brother's stuff, and like that's when they fell out and he told him to get out. He has the boots with him and he just holds them up to Johnny. Just like, even Johnny's like, I can't believe this man came to cheer me on, like what is happening? So the dad confronts everyone in the crowd and starts saying that he knows he treated his son horribly, and he realizes that now, and he knows he can never make up for it. But he says, like, that's my son there. My son is Johnny Joestar, and he made it here all by himself, and like just starts making it known, and like everyone starts clapping for Johnny, and I'm just like, oh my God. This was such a nice moment to have. I gotta tell you, it came out of nowhere. I never saw this happening. I just kind of assumed that like the dad was being him and that was never going to change. That was just part of Johnny's past that he had to overcome and everything. And I gotta tell you, like, I don't love the dad. I certainly don't love how he treated his son. But I gotta tell you, of all the times that like a parent does something like that to their kid, it is so incredibly rare to actually see that person come and own up to what they did and apologize and do anything to try to make it better. Like typically in this situation, I feel like 9 times out of 10 of all my experience in my life is that like, you just never get that. You never get that, at least closure, you know what I mean? At least like, and it doesn't matter because like at this point I know that Johnny knows he's reflected on his past enough to come to terms with it, and I hope he knows that none of that was his fault. I think he's been through a lot and he's done a lot of soul searching about it. But to get that is huge. That's something most people never ever get. So even if you want to say like, okay, I still hate the dad or whatever, it's like, but that for Johnny is huge. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love that for him. When he came and he held up the boots, I gasped. My dog was so alarmed. All right, so that was just a really nice moment. We had everyone clapping for Johnny, and it's like heck yeah, he did have help from he had help from Gyro and everything, and we know that. But like, he got here without you, sir. You left him in a hospital paralyzed. Heck yeah, he got here by himself, or at least without you. But also, yay. At least he's sorry for it. You know what I mean? Like, at least there's that. Most people never even get that. So, meanwhile, Johnny catches up to Dio, and he's trying to figure out like how he's gonna shoot him and avoid the time stop ability. And then Johnny almost runs into a bunch of wires. We see like all these like wires set up, and it almost like, to me, it almost kind of looks like what Hierophant did to Dio in part 3, like the way we had that all set up, and then of course he stops time. He takes them all down like the little cobwebs, and he, you know how it went. It was very sad. But it's just kind of interesting. So the wires are starting to cut him because they're very sharp wires. And so he fires into a nearby wall to try to like kind of get out of the way, but he's still taking damage, and now pieces of the wall are hitting him too. Finn, chapter 91. This is a really good one. We get to see a little bit more of Dio and know like a little bit more of the background. Like at this point we know that he came up out of the hole that Valentine was in. Like it's not that hard to put together that like, okay, this is Dio from another dimension, but we actually get to see. So like that whole time that Valentine was giving that big speech to Johnny about like, oh, I promise I'll let you go, blah blah blah, he had already gone and made this deal with Dio. I knew I shouldn't trust him, but like now I know. I'm like, they haven't really gone into how, like, what this deal is like yet. We're gonna get into it in later chapters, because, like, up to this point, you're kind of thinking, like, okay, well, it's Diego from another dimension, and I even had to stop and think, I'm like, wait, is this the one that got thrown off the train with the other hot pins? And I want to say no, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't think so. Like, I don't think it'd be the same one. Second of all, if that one had Zowaldo, I think that would have gone a lot differently. So I'm guessing no. But it is a different Diego. And you might be thinking to yourself, if he has a different stand, and a stand is a reflection of your soul energy, what does that say about his soul? How he's not really our Diego. Is he? I'm just gonna ask you to put a big old pin in that, because you're gonna need that later. But this is really good, so we get to see like how it all happened. We know we're really like truly in the end game of this entire race now. It's kind of funny that like they're sort of accidentally in the race, even though neither one of them really cares about the race at this point, I don't think. Thing with the dad was so great. It was just so out of nowhere, and I honestly I don't know if maybe anyone can shed any light on like, did Araki tell why he decided to do this? Was this just like something he'd always planned? Was it part of his redemption, or did he just get to the end and decide like, I really don't like where I left things with the dad, like I wanted to give him kind of like at least half a heart, and like I don't know, and maybe I really have no idea what the reason is, but I'm glad about it. Like, why the heck not? Why the heck not have, you know, one less completely shattered relationship here? Like, I'm not saying they're going to be like besties after this, but it's something. It's something. Like I said, even if they have no relationship, at least they're in, I feel like, a better spot than they were. Like, it's wonderful. It's so much nicer for Johnny to be able to have that. Like, I'm not trying to say like this proves him right or anything, because like I would really hope that he knows by this point that like his dad was in the wrong. But it's nice just to have the confirmation. Like, it seriously is. There's a little bit of like vindication there. You know what I mean? I don't know if maybe anyone understands what I'm trying to say. But anyway, really good chapter. So as you can see, we're about to have a big fight, big standoff between Johnny and Dio. So chapter 92, because we have so much to cover in this. Johnny is taking a lot of damage from this wall, and he's trying to avoid the wires, but he can't avoid the wires completely, and one of them slices his kneecap off, guys. You can't make this up. You can't make this. Well, I mean, Araki did make it up, but still, only he could do it. He's still trying to fire after Dio, but he misses. But as Dio is riding past one of the walls in this alley that they're riding through, he notices a hand with like a spinning motion bursting out of the wall. And he stops time and is like, following me is useless. And of course it's Muda. He's gonna say Muda a lot in this, you guys. It's gonna be very, very rewarding. But then the hand starts to move. I think he even says Ria at one point, now that I'm thinking about it. So the hand starts to move, just like what we saw in part 3 with Jojo, where like we're in the time stop, but somebody is moving through it, and I love it. So Dio is shocked, and the hand starts to move towards him, and we can see now that it's Tusk Act 4, and he's just like menacing AF, you guys. It's so scary. Like, Tusk Act 4 is like a whole different level of like creepy. He's got that kind of creepiness that I've really only, I think, ever seen maybe with like Death 13. And that's really saying something. I said that last time as well. And Dio's like, this is impossible. And Tusk is just like, chew me. And like, I imagine like when he was a little baby elephant, he was kind of like, chew me. And now he's like saying it in a much creepier way. And like, it's just terrifying. It's so good. Like, for something that is not a moving picture on the screen, the emotion that it evokes is so profound. So Dio is thinking of what Valentine told him about Johnny's rotational energy, and he explains that it controls gravity, so maybe that means that it can cross into stopped time. And I find that really interesting for 2 reasons, just really, really quick here. First of all, I'm not a scientist, but I have no idea if that could really be a thing. I don't think anyone's really explored the scientific possibilities behind stopping time and gravity's effect on it. But if anyone out there is science inclined and they want to try to clear that up for me, please be my guest. The other thing is, the whole gravity thing always reminded me of Poochie and his like next to last ability. And just how like his whole like that whole last part had so much to do with gravity and everything. It was such a big central theme. If Poochie was controlling gravity too, would that mean he could have like theoretically, I mean, they were not, this Dio was gone by then. Like, I wonder if he could have moved inside the time stop. It's just something to think about, you know what I mean? Poochie's ability was not exactly the same. But it had to do with gravity. So just something that I thought about, something to ponder. little food for thought, I guess. So Dio gets away instead of trying to take the arm like he had planned, because he knows that like if he's touched by that rotation, he's basically cooked. So Dio's like, oh, Johnny's gonna be like my greatest test, and of course he sees this all as like a big ego challenge thing, and he's really Dioing out at this point. Johnny is saying he wishes he could think of something tough to say, like Gyro would, and I'm like, I know, baby, I miss him too. So meanwhile, we see that cut to Lucy and Steven Steele, and she's telling him like she's worried about Johnny. If the corpse ends up like allying with the one who possesses it, like what if he doesn't get it, blah, blah, blah. So Johnny's thinking, cut back to Johnny, he's thinking that he has to make an attack on Dio that he won't see or hear coming, and he has to wait for Dio to have like a blind spot, and that's the only way to do that is with the perfect rotation or Tusk Act 4. So Dio throws something behind him, like this is freaking Mario Kart, in Johnny's direction. And then we see Dio going for his matches. So we know exactly, as soon as you see that and like Johnny sniffing it, it's like, oh my God, okay, I know exactly what this is. It's gasoline or something. So Johnny realizes that Dio stopped time to do this because he didn't even see it happen. And he's about to do it again, which he does. So Dio throws all the lit matches and says like his plan is complete now. So Johnny's on fire. He's literally on fire, and it's horrible. And he calls out Tusk Act 4. And Johnny says he needs to get into the sewer to put out the fire. And he says he couldn't predict Dio, but he's definitely gonna make sure that he takes him out with Act 4. Finn chapter 92. That was a shorter one. The actiony ones tend to be a little bit more. That was a good one. We're already seeing like, we've seen a little bit of this with Diego. He got a little bit puffy on himself after the whole like making a deal with Valentine thing, but I feel like this Dio is really going like, this Dio does feel more like Dio to me, and he has the Worldo, so yeah, it's not gonna be the last time that he's gonna feel a lot more like old universe Dio. I'm just gonna let you know right now. I love the little nod to part 3 with like the hand moving and stop time. I love stuff like that. I can't wait to see that animated. It's gonna be such a good jump scare moment. I can't wait to see like anime only people react to part 7. It's gonna be so entertaining for me. It's so rewarding because I've never been on that side of it before. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess technically I've seen whatever I'm watching somebody reacting to, so, but, like, I've never been quite on this side of it where, like, I've read it and I know it so far in advance. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. But yeah, so this is gonna be quite a challenge. It does seem, I was wondering about that if, like, based on the infinite rotation and everything, how would that affect time? And would it actually be something that is, like, it works outside of time? And apparently, yes, it is. Or at least the gravity aspect has some kind of control over time. I don't understand exactly how that works, but I'm going to go with it, okay? It's Jojo science. Don't worry about it. So chapter 93, Johnny does manage to get into the sewer and puts himself out, and he's hearing, like, noises above. And Dio is like above ground, still racing, looks behind him and notices that Johnny isn't there. So Johnny starts to fire up from inside the sewer where Dio is riding above ground. So that he can like hear, apparently he like heard the hoof steps. What is it when it's a horse? Like they're, I don't know. Somebody who knows horses, let me know. So the announcer is telling where everyone is, and he says that, like, the one person who should be there isn't. Like, where is he? Like, all of a sudden, Johnny's gone. So Dio figures out what Johnny is doing, and Johnny keeps trying to fire at him from below. So we get this beautiful shot of Johnny and Tusk just being menacing AF. I mean, it's just so rewarding to just see him in his final form, I gotta tell you. So next thing we know, these fangirls start swarming Dio. Like, he's in the race. He's mid-race. His horse is moving. And they're swarming him like he's the Beatles. And Okay, on the one hand, all right, I get it. Diego's very beautiful. You know, he's very charming. People are attracted to him. Like, yeah, you know, I have to taken part in a little bit of simping over Diego. But my girls, he's in the middle of the race. Like, he didn't stop at a light or something. Get out of his way. Like, if you're his fangirls, you want to see him win. Why are you not doing this at the finish line? Like, why are you hurting his chances? Like, that just makes no sense to me. I don't know. And that's coming from somebody who, like I said, is very much has simped over this man. I understand the concept, but like, you're literally trying to... Anywho, I guess maybe they don't understand how a race works. I don't know. But it gets really sad after this because, so the girls are swarming him, and Dio figures out what Johnny is trying to do. So Dio stops time, and he rearranges the girls so that Tusk hits them, and they explode and fly apart. Like, it's so gross. And Dio's like, that wasn't my crime. That's on you, Johnny. They were just such nice and cute girls. It's like, it's too bad they broke apart and died. And I'm like, what? What even? Like, I was so surprised at this because, like, he's so awful. On the one hand, I guess he kind of feels bad about it. But he's so awful. And I'm like, AU Dio, like, alternate universe Dio is no joke. Like, this other, like, parallel dimension Dio, clearly, because I feel like, this is where I'm starting to, like, see a lot more of the difference, too. Because I feel like Diego, I always said that I felt like Diego would have been kind of somewhat respectful of women. And we didn't have a ton of proof of that, but we know he was close to his mother. We know he was planning on turning on Hot Pants, I guess, and trying to get the corpse. But, like, he worked with Hot Pants. He didn't seem like... He just didn't seem like... And he didn't even seem like the type who was, like, going to frivolously kill somebody. Like, he killed Wakapipo, and that sucked. He did seem, like, very regretful about that. I'm not saying it was okay. I feel like a lot of this sounds like me defending Diego's behavior. I'm not. I'm just trying to illustrate the differences for you between him and, like, what we're used to with Dio. And here, like, he's like, oh, that's too bad because they were super cute. But, like, yeah, he just straight up, like, got them killed and kind of didn't really bother bat an eye about it after. So, yeah. So he sucks. Just to let you know, you're going to see it a lot more later on. So Johnny's gaining on him and says he needs to get closer to shoot. And Johnny and Dio are both speeding up and breaking off from the rest of the groups. Of course, like, the announcer's going, like, he just really, like, getting into this thinking, like, oh, wow, what? They're doing something really cool right now. It's like, bro, you have no idea. So Johnny's figured out that Dio can stop time for about 5 seconds. Like, he sized that up real quick. He says he's going to get into position to be 5 seconds away from being in range to shoot him, basically. Like, he's got a plan. So Dio's thinking, come get me. This is all part of my plan. Like, I'm going to win. If I have to make a sacrifice, I will. You know, we know Valentine was talking about the sacrifices and everything. And apparently Dio is aware, too, that there will be sacrifices involved. So Johnny shoots. Dio stops time. Zawurldo. Finn to chapter 93. We're really getting into the part, like, not that we didn't always do this, but I feel like we're really getting into that part where, like, every ending is like a cliffhanger. This is a really good chapter. Again, demonstrates some of the brutality, I think, of this other universe Dio, which, like I said, will not be the last example. By the end of this, I'm really, really done with him. Like, just to give you an idea, like, I started off, I was like, oh my god, a Dio I could actually love, and we are ending with, like, screw this person. Like, I'm done. So yes, this is basically kind of like another, like, action one, but it was really cool to see Tusk, just really menacing, and Johnny trying to think his way out of this. Johnny is really, like, firing on all cylinders right now, no pun intended, because he's firing bullets, but, like, he's very sharp right now, and I'm really proud of him. I really do feel like there's quite a few examples here in the later chapters, especially of how Gyro kind of rubbed off on him. Gyro was always kind of, like, thinking, he was always, like, very... I mean, Gyro was very intelligent, like, for all his silliness and everything. Like, he was very strategic. He was very intelligent. Man was like a doctor, basically. So, doctor, executioner. He knew how to think. Like, someone with bad intent, I guess, but he also is very, very, very smart and put things together quickly, and you can really see Johnny kind of channeling that here. So, all right, guys, chapter 94, the penultimate chapter. I know I just went on about how Dio sucks, but I need you to stop and look at this image that Araki sensei has blessed us with. Why does he look this good? I need to know why you would make him so vile. I really think that Araki loves Diego. Like, I really think he does. He loves drawing him, at least, because, like, I don't think we've ever seen Diego where he isn't, like giving, like, bedroom eyes. You know what I mean? Like, he's just always like that. And he's saying, like, Zelworldo, and you just know he's saying it in, like, the breathiest, like, I can't wait to hear this animated. It's so help me. It better be. I really cannot picture anyone but, like, Dio, OG Universe Dio's voice actor as Dio in this. Especially now that we have Zelworldo and everything. Like, don't you think they would probably try to make that happen? I don't know about Johnny. I don't know if they'll have Jonathan's voice actor come in and be Johnny. I think they already have a different Johnny for the video games. And I've heard him, and he sound, well, I think we heard different voices for him way back when I played the Pizza Mozzarella song, the cheese song. I hope the cheese song gets released and just goes like quadruple platinum or whatever equivalent they had of that back in the 1800s. Because he deserves that. He deserves to have his legacy carried on. Anyway, I just had to share that with you. I'm very frustrated and confused as to why and how Dio looks this good, and I don't want to like him. I really don't, guys. I want to break this cycle of toxic behavior with Diego. I really truly do. But somebody tell me how I'm supposed to when Araki is just like making this thirst trap of a picture. Shame. Oh, anyway, getting to the actual chapter, he grabs his gun. He's got 4 seconds left. He gets Zelworldo into place with 2 seconds left. He aims the gun with 1 second left. And he shoots him when time resumes. Zelworldo gets hit in the shoulder by Johnny's shot, and Johnny gets hit in the neck by Dio's gun. So Dio shoots again, and Johnny's thrown off his horse. Diego's just standing over him and tells him, like, now you're unhorsed and you can't use the rotation because, like, you don't have a horse. Now, I'm pretty sure that when Slow Dancer didn't he have him, like, kick him into the air and Johnny was in the perfect rotation? Like, I'm pretty sure he did that without the horse. But I don't know if we can make lightning strike twice here. So maybe he's right. I don't know. But the first thing I thought was like, bro, I don't even think he needs a horse to take care of you. But anyway, so Dio shoots. Oh, I already said that. Yeah, so he's like, yeah, you don't have a horse, you're cooked. But then he mentions that he knows about the infinite bullet that Johnny shot at the frame of the bridge and says, like, yeah, like, this is all according to my plan. I knew about all that, whatever. So Tusk is starting to crawl up Zelworldo's leg, and Dio chops he chops his leg off. And he's, like, screaming Muda as his leg bursts off. Like, he is unhinged. Like, you thought that, like, the other Diego was unhinged when he was, like, going all feral on Valentine? No, I don't think, like, this is worse. This is way worse. So he tells Johnny to take his own rotation, and he takes the leg and he throws it at Johnny so that it hits Johnny, and Johnny starts spinning because we know, like, whatever the rotation touches is going to start rotating as well. So Johnny tries to call out Act 2 while he's spinning out of control, and Act 2 fires at Dio, and he tries to step out of the way, but it's, like, going for him anyway. So Dio flashes back to Valentine telling him to use the infinite rotation against Johnny, that's, like, the only way to defeat him is to use it on him, and that's what he just did. So Johnny is spinning apart and unraveling. The announcer mentions that Dio is back in the race and notices his injury, which is kind of hard to not notice, but he's on the final stretch to the finish, apparently. So everyone is gaining on Dio, as he heads for the church. Johnny tries to call back his horse, but he's spinning so bad that like he can't even get on the horse. The announcer is calling out what's happening, and Johnny is just like crying and reaching out as they announce that the winner of the race is Dio. And I'm just like, of all the ways I saw this going, I never saw it going this way. Honest to God, in my mind, I was thinking like the shonen typical ending for this would be for Johnny to win. It really would be. And I'll talk a little bit why, maybe at the end, why I think this is better. Like, why I think it's better. But I never would have guessed it would be Dio. He wasn't even trying, you guys. Like, he really, honest to God, I don't even think he cared about the race. Maybe he did. But I think he was just trying to get to the church. For the corpse. So Dio is approaching the shelter as he recalls what Valentine told him about how to get there and all these like details and everything. So he has the corpse in the vault, and again is flashing back to Valentine telling him to like take the napkin in his place, and that all the good luck in the center of the world, or Zawoldo, will be at that place. Finn chapter 94. Yeah, so couple things. First of all, using the rotation against Johnny is not even a thing I knew could happen. Like, in a lot of cases, I feel like you can't use somebody's stand against them necessarily, but in some cases you can. Like we saw with like Grateful Dead, like it affected him too. So like there definitely are cases where like, yeah, your own stand can affect you. Like not with certain ones, like Crazy Diamond, like he can't heal himself or anything, but like, yeah, apparently that is a thing that can happen. I don't think Johnny could, I don't know, because your stand is supposed to protect you is the thing. And that's why like people in the past who have tried to like unalive themselves, like their stand protects them. So I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how exact, but anyway, since it was Dio that threw the leg at him, he kind of was the one who implemented the rotation, I guess, if you want to say that. But yeah, first thought was, I wonder if he can like reverse it the way that Valentine had proposed that he reversed it. But at this point, I think he's just spinning so badly out of control. Like, I don't even know if he can get enough of like a handle on any kind of tangible anything around him to do that. Yeah. So he's in trouble. We have one chapter left and he's in big trouble. Dio is at the church. He's at the shelter. He has the corpse. This looks really, really bad. And I gotta tell you, at this point in time, and like beginning of chapter 95, I was really starting to sweat it out. I really was. Like, because if we're doing like a parallel to Phantom Blood, it's not so good for Johnny. It's not so good for Johnny. It's not really... Dio ended up fine after that. But whatever. But yeah, it's really ultimately, I guess, not good for him either. But just wait till you see how everything wraps up, you guys, because there's so many satisfying things about how this wrapped up, and we will get into it. So chapter 95, you guys, last chapter of Steel Ball Run. Buckle up. Dio recalls Valentine telling him that all he needs to do is like lock the shelter and you're good. He says that even if anyone tries to do something to it, it would take them like 80 years. It's basically like safe for 80 years, I guess. Johnny is thinking, like, cut to Johnny. He's thinking like he lost. He lost. And there won't even be anything left of him behind. Like, there won't even be a soul left behind. I really was thinking at this point, I'm like, oh my God, are they actually doing this? Are they actually going to end with, like, Johnny getting taken out? And, like, I know we won't end with, like, the bad guy winning, ultimately, but, like, will it really take Johnny sacrificing himself? I was really, really starting to wonder. Dio's thinking that he believes Valentine about like what he said and that he's about to become the center of Zawoldo, which of course we know, like, that's pretty much how Dio sees himself. So then we see Lucy show up behind him and I'm just like, what? What? Zawoldo takes her by the throat and slams her into a wall, and Dio asks her why she's come, and she says, for happiness. So at this point, Dio's starting to get way too close. Getting a little too personal space invaded. And it's not looking right. I'm just going to tell you right now. So Dio says he can't leave Steven Steele alive because he knows too much at this point, but he's really starting to creep on her, you guys. He's creeping on her so bad, and he's saying, like, she's so young and cute, and, like, what's he gonna do with her? And I'm like, oh my, what are we doing right now? What are we doing right now? What? Because, like, what is it with this Dio and women? Huh? So Lucy's saying she's been waiting for Dio to get there, like, the whole time, and just in case Johnny couldn't get the corpse back. So he tells her, like, the corpse isn't hers, no matter how cute a voice she says it in. And I'm just like, he's giving me such the ick right now. It's not even funny. And he actually says to wait until his leg heals. And then he's like, he just goes on about all the stuff he's gonna do to her. Disgusting! And he's like, he says he'll make her fall the lowest a woman can go and then kill her. And I'm just like, oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. First of all, no. Don't. I don't like it. I don't want it. This is not my Diego. This is not, and I know the other Diego wasn't even really my Diego, but no, this one feels like Dio, but somehow it's even worse because, like, we never really saw what Dio was doing during his escapades. Like, we never saw it. We would see maybe, like, the aftermath. And we knew, you know, he had, like, a bunch of kids running around. So we kind of, like, put two and two together. But there's so much more detail here. Like, I can't decide if, like, he's worse than Dio or if it's just that we're seeing it now. You know what I mean? Like, this is probably what OG Dio was doing to everyone. And now we're just seeing it. And I'm like, okay, this makes total sense as to why he has the Worldo. He's definitely more like the old Dio. He's definitely gross and icky, and he hates women. And I'm just like, I don't know what was different about this Diego and the other universe, but, like, I sincerely stick to the idea that, like, the other Diego, while he made terrible choices and he ended up succumbing to the lure of power and just his own bitterness, he was layered. He was layered, and I really don't think he wanted to, like, purposely. I don't think he, like, got off on hurting people. And this guy seems like he does. I just gotta tell you right now. I don't care if my window is open. In this situation, this is when her knee should go right to his balls. Right. No, don't think about it. Don't give him time to use the Worldo. Don't just knee. Run. What she actually does is way better, though, because my girl Lucy, she's been through a lot, and she's learned a thing or two. And I gotta tell you, as much as I was, like, yelling in my head for her to kick him in the balls, I don't even care. I know it's crass. I don't even care. She has something with her, like a cloth, something wrapped up in a cloth, and he grabs it, and he's like, huh? What's this? As soon as he takes it in his hands, I'm like, oh my God, I knew exactly what it was. I knew exactly what it was going to be. I knew it was going to be a part of the other Diego. I knew it. I just want to go on the record as saying that I figured it out before they even said it. So we flash back to Lucy and Steven Steele back at the train tracks, and she's saying that she has to find that. She keeps on saying she has to find that so that they can find their happiness and all this stuff. And she mentions that, like, if two of the same things from different worlds meet, they get destroyed. And I'm like, heck yes, girl, let's go. So we cut to present. Dio looks in the bag, and it's the other Diego's head.
Surprise.
He freaks the heck out. He tries to use the Worldo to get away, but it's no use. He's starting to burst apart, and he's going crazy. Like, he's like, how dare you do this to Dio, the pinnacle of the Worldo, and I'll make you pay and all this stuff. But they're starting to, like, merge at this point. Like, it's way too late. And he starts to burst open. I want to say he says re at this part, but don't quote me on that. I feel like at some point during this he says re. Maybe it's during the fight with John. I can't remember. I don't have the screenshots in front of me. But at some point, he lets out a big old re. Don't worry about it. He checks it off the list. And so they're starting to merge. He's bursting open. Zawaldo's head explodes. It is the nastiest thing I've ever seen. It is so crazy. Have we ever actually seen a Stan's head explode? Have we? Maybe we have. But this was among the top examples of it. Let's just put it that way, if we have seen it before. So meanwhile, I really hope there's no one out there. I don't even care at this point, you guys. I don't even care. So meanwhile, Steven Steele finds Johnny and tells him to get onto his horse, Steven Steele's horse that he brought. He's been disqualified from the race, but like he still has a chance in general at like making this all happen, you know? At this point, he's not even in it for the race, you know? So Johnny's able to use the reverse rotation on himself, which is what I was kind of thinking, and maybe he just needed to like get stable enough for a second. Maybe like seeing Steven Steele like gave him a centered focus. I don't know. And he was able to use the reverse rotation. Also, like he had never done that before. He didn't even know it could really work. That was just something that Valentine had proposed. So you can kind of see like maybe why that wasn't like his first instinct to do that. I mean, your first instinct is I'm unraveling like a ribbon. That's probably the only thing you're thinking at that point. But he manages to do it, and he gets on the horse with Steven Steele. So we see that the corpse is in the vault. Dio's head has blown off, and we just see like shots of the city after the race is finished. It's an interesting time, you guys. So basically, that's it. And next we see that Johnny's narrating this whole thing, and he's narrating and he's saying that this is the story of a revival and how he was able to start walking again. And I gotta tell you, some of the stuff that's coming in this speech is really some of the most beautiful stuff I've ever heard. I've heard things in sermons that can't even stand up to how inspiring this is. He says he was praying the whole journey. He was praying for tomorrow. He was praying they'd have food and be able to get sleep. He was praying that his friend and their horses would be okay, and just etc. He says they crossed each river one by one, and now he's crossed the final river. And it turns out, by the way, he tells us in his post-narration, it turns out that Pocoloco won by default because they couldn't find Diego because... So, kind of ironic that, like, this whole time, you know, Pocoloco Stan has been, like, really hyping him up and being like, look, you got this. You had got the streak of good luck. You got it. You're gonna... And you know what? It was true. It was absolutely true. A power of positivity, maybe? Or just it was fate. I don't know. Like, however you are. Just it was coincidence. I don't know. Like, however you want to shape it. But Pocoloco won. So they couldn't find Valentine after the race either, obviously, and the mayor made like all these excuses as to why he couldn't show up, but the people went on to like love Valentine, and they continue to love him. His approval ratings went way up. Leaders of every nation sent like accolades and distinctions to him, and Steven Steele, on the other hand, was criticized a lot after the race because so many people died, which sadly was not even his doing. Like, it wasn't hazards of the race. It was things that most of the deaths I can think of were all because of like Valentine. People worked for Valentine. People were like, didn't even have anything to do with Steven Steele. But of course he's around to take the blame. But then it turns out they made like tons of money off of this race, and he donated all of it to charity. And then of course everyone kind of piped down. So Steven Steele is walking away from the vault, and he remarks that what Valentine wanted was the right to be fortunate, but that things like that can really only be decided by the will of God. He says the corpse doesn't belong to anyone, any nation, any one person, anything. And he says it's better if the corpse is stored away, because at least then it doesn't belong to anyone. Nobody's trying to like take ownership of it. He says in the end, no one was really qualified to be the owner. And Lucy just kind of looks at her hands, and I'm like, are they kind of trying to imply that like for a while Lucy was, or at least just that like Lucy had had this experience of like having the corpse within her, or not really sure what they're trying to imply, but like if anyone got close to actually possessing the corpse, it was her. And we saw even that, like, it was killing her. So like, yeah, it's really nobody, this is not a power that anyone should have. It is literally trying to play God. And I will get into that more in my outro a little bit, but yeah, I think they got the right idea. Seal it up, and yeah, nobody should have that. Johnny is boarding a ship, and the guys who were like the race staff are working there. It turns out that like their full-time job is working there. So he says he has a corpse in the box that he's carrying on his back. And at first I'm like, oh my God, wait, not the corpse. So I'm like, no, it's probably Gyro's body. And it is. He says that he's bringing his friend and his beloved horse back home. And apparently he took Valkyrie too, because we know how much Valkyrie meant to Gyro. So the guy is giving him trouble, but like you can't do that. You can take a dead body and everything. And so Johnny tries to like bribe him again, and the guys just like freak out, and they're trying to throw the crate off the ship, and like Johnny gets so real right now, and he's like, there's no way we're going to get this off the ship. Get whatever authorization you need to, but this is happening. Like he freaks out at them, and he even says yo-ho. And I'm just like, oh my God, he totally channeled Gyro right now. Like you can see where Gyro really rubbed off on him, because there were so many times when like Johnny was about to give up on something, and Gyro was just like came in like a boss and was like, nope, we're doing this. This is happening, and here's your solution. We also see that Norisuke is on the ship. I think he came in second place for the race, so I think there was also it was a pretty good reward. I can't remember the exact figures, but Johnny, we see, is on the ship, and he just closes his eyes and thinks back on the race and everyone they met, everyone they fought, the people they fought alongside of, and of course he thinks of Gyro telling him about lesson 4 and everything. And we see, as he has his eyes closed, we see the spirit, the memory of Gyro there beside him. And he says out loud, why don't we pray for a safe voyage getting you home? And he just looks at the steel ball and says like, let's go home. And wow. So the narrator, I think it's like the actual narrator now, not Johnny, explains that the Kingdom of Naples had a revolution a few years later, and the monarchy was abolished. So Marco was set free. Like he had supposedly committed this crime against, the royal family or whatever. And since they weren't around anymore, he was given amnesty and he was set free. And then he later died of a cold.
What? What the fuck?
I'm just like, Araki sensei, why do you do this to me? Why are you I do have a few like theories and just thoughts on that, because initially that's the biggest kick in the head that I could think of to bring us this far, worrying about Marco, and then just like kill him off. First of all, it did say several years later, so maybe he was at least, I don't know if he even made it to adulthood. I don't know. It's really sad to think that he died anyway. But yeah, I'll get more into that in my intro, or outro. It's rumored that the Zeppelis moved to a different country after the whole, like, the monarchy was abolished. So I don't know if, like, they're dropping a hint that maybe we'll see them again. Maybe we'll see another Zeppeli. Maybe we'll have another Zeppeli Jojo later on. I would love that, even though I'm, like, never going to be okay with the idea of losing. Apparently, like, it's just a streak now. Like, we can't break the streak of just, like, killing Zeppelis. So, but I don't know. Like, maybe that was a hint that they're, where are they? They're not in Italy. Like, will they be in the next place we're in? Like, what's going on? I don't know. So we see the ship on the ocean, the clouds. It's beautiful, tranquil picture. Finn. And it actually comes up and says the end. Just like it always does at the end of a part. Finn. There's so much I want to say here. I will try to keep it brief because these are just kind of my initial thoughts, like wrapping up the part. And like I said, I kind of want to do another video later, maybe doing like a little bit more of an in-depth discussion or review, or at least like a tier list of like characters and everything. But my final thoughts, just to give you like the abridged version. maybe I should give you my thoughts on the chapter first, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the whole part. Because what I'm about to read is my thoughts on the whole part. Dio's demise here was so much more satisfying for so many reasons. First of all, he was truly someone that I could root for getting taken out. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like sad with Diego when it happened, because like I kind of felt like it was really fast, and also he was like after Valentine, which was kind of like enemy of our enemy at that time. So there's something just about it that like left me a little bit unsatisfied. This one was very satisfying for that reason, because Lucy finally got to get in, like deal a killing blow to one of these a-holes that was this poor girl is just existing. Not every person, but so many people she's come into contact with have just been like, hey girl. And it's just like, she is a girl, first of all, like 14. Second of all, like, she is just existing. And they're like, oh my God, you're so cute. Oh my God, you're seduced me. Oh my God. No, you are just PDF file. She's not doing anything. All she's doing is existing. Stop. Leave her alone. So like after all she's been through in this whole story, like just time and time again, she's just getting like crapped on. She finally gets her moment to take someone out. And really she's the one that saves pretty much, I think, everything. I mean, I don't think we want to think about what would happen if Dio had gotten possession of that corpse. Steven Steele helped save Johnny, which was great, but then Lucy was the one who saved us all from a world where Dio was the center of the world. So that was very satisfying. This is stretching a little bit, and this is just me like trying to rationalize my love for the first Diego, which I know he was a complicated man, and I know he wasn't necessarily a good person who did good things, but I still feel this just unreasonable attachment to him. And in my mind, that was kind of his swan song. Like his actual like going out was to take out the really bad Dio. Is that stupid? It's a little bit stupid, but you know what? I'm sticking by it. It's my personal opinion that like the real way that he went out, the real way that he was destroyed was taking out this worst Dio. It's a little bit more satisfying of an end for him, and it makes me feel a little bit better about like this Diego being so awful. Just so like we got the little bit of like, no, but the good one kind of, he went in and he killed him. That's how I'm choosing to see it. And you can try to change my mind if you want, but I don't think you're gonna have much luck. So that was really satisfying. The whole outro with Johnny, I knew he was standing. I'm like, they didn't make a big deal of it, but like I knew that like through the process of that whole final thing, like I knew he was like, I saw him like that straight up looks like he's standing up. So he did get his healing, and he got his healing in so many more ways than he expected, you guys. I really think that was symbolic. Like his journey to healing his legs was like he actually healed himself. And I'll get more into that in a second, but to focus on the chapter, I knew we had a 50-50 shot of getting like, where are they now with everybody? Maybe like doing a time jump like they did at the end of part 2, and then just, or like just leaving it as like, we really don't know what happened. Like, we have an ending. We know what happened to Marco. But like, we really don't get that. So I'm dying to know, like, where are we gonna start back up? Are we gonna be 50 years later? Are we gonna do what they did in Phantom Blood and do like 50 years later? It's gonna be less time. Is it gonna be more time? I don't know. Araki actually has the advantage this time around of kind of planning out these parts a little bit more with the timing. So like, is he going to, I think the newest one might be pretty recent though. So I don't know when part 8 is going to take place, like what time period. I don't know if Johnny will be in it. I don't know if like, I'm hoping we'll get some, you know, if it's like his grandkid or his great grandkid or like someone down the line, like, will we at least get to like see him, or like, no? Like, did he live a long, happy life? Like, what happened to him? Cause like we didn't even end with him having like a love interest here. Like we didn't get anything, which I know that happens in JoJo parts. Like I know like we didn't leave off with exactly what Giorno was gonna do or Josuke was gonna do, but like they weren't responsible for the whole line. So like, but I knew there was a chance that like we were just gonna end with like no explanation of what really happened, like what long term happened. But I love the ending. I think it was there was like a coming full circle, and just, I don't know, there was a peace about it. As much as we've been through, as much as we've lost, there was a peace about it. It really felt like he was at peace for the first time, the entire part. And that was pretty satisfying to see. Going into my final thoughts, I will kind of segue from this chapter to the final thoughts, because one thing I wanted to address was how there are so many parallels between like this and Phantom Blood and Johnny and Jonathan. And one of them immediately I noticed right away as we panned out for the final shot was, oh my God, we're ending this part on a ship as well. Only this time, like, we're ending with Johnny living and being at peace and kind of like having his whole life ahead of him versus Jonathan, who died on the ship. Which is really sad, but there are a lot of comparisons that you can make, I think, between Johnny and Jonathan. They had similar like traumas. It wasn't exactly the same, but they had like bad childhoods. They had, I guess you could say there was issues with their parents. It was definitely way more pronounced with Johnny and everything, but like they both went through a lot. Like, you don't want to compare traumas, but like they both went through a lot growing up. They both fought with Dio. They both lost their Zeppelis. Also, I find it kind of interesting that like Phantom Blood, I feel like a big focus of it was like life and death. Like we had Dio, who had embraced death and rejected his humanity and became a vampire and was like undead and everything. And then we had Jonathan, whose power was like life and the sun. And here in part 7, we're dealing with kind of like maybe not as much life and death as we are like the purpose of life and having lost that purpose, being a broken person and everything, kind of the more like philosophical aspect of that as opposed to literal. And it was like Johnny's life had basically stopped. Like he lost his purpose, he lost his way in life, and his power ends up being something infinite, something eternal, something that never stops. And so I think you can kind of like maybe maybe that's me reaching a little bit, maybe I'm waxing a little too philosophical, I don't know, but I think you can make some decent comparisons and compare and contrast when it comes to part 1 and part 7. Again, I'll probably have more in-depth thoughts on that later, because I feel like if you really sat down, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you could like line up and everything. But that's just kind of like my initial takeaway from it. In terms of my final thoughts of the part as a whole, I loved this part. I love the seinen style. This is everything that I felt like if I was ever feeling like something was missing from JoJo's, it was everything we got in part 7, because, we had this great shonen story with all the other parts, but you could tell that Araki really at times wanted to set up something a little bit deeper and maybe get into characters a little bit more, but there's not always time to explore that when you have to set up a good action plot and you have to kind of focus on, the main themes of a shonen are like action, friendship, And it's not like we didn't have any of those here, but we have a much, much, much more in-depth focus on like people's motivations. Like the whole final fight with Valentine, like a lot of it ended in a conversation, like we had great action, we had great power-ups and everything leading up to it. It's not like we didn't. But at the end of the day, I feel like it was a little bit more about the meaning behind everything as opposed to the literal. I mean, the literal stuff was great too. It's not like the stands weren't amazing in this and everything didn't look great and everything. Don't get me wrong, but I think you see where I'm going with this. Even during battle, we focused a lot on the characters. So many side villains got backstories and everything, like actually got motivations and things like that. More than ever, I felt like stands were linked to people's souls and their characters. I feel like we really doubled down on that concept, like starting in part 5. And I do feel like there's some interesting comparisons to this in part 5. Like you would think, like it was going to be, and you can compare it to part 1 very much so. I mean, there's elements of all the parts in this, you know, but I found myself thinking more and more about kind of like a lot of the overall, some of the themes of part 5 and some of the themes of this, and I'll get into that. But yeah, Dio is a good example of the stands encompassing like the idea of a soul, because we can see that like the one that had Zawoldo was definitely, he was more Dio. He was more like old school Dio. So the journey just in general is so brilliantly done. It looked beautiful. I mean, the art is just really technically better than ever. Like I don't crap on the old art style. Like I love the very Fist of the North Star inspired, like the big jacked, and like I think there's charm and beauty and in all of his art styles. I would never be one to be like, in the art. I love the old art style. I think some things look better in the old art style. Like I've seen him drawing like Joseph and Jonathan in the new art style and everything, and it looks really cool. It's really beautiful in his art style. He's come into his own so much, and I'm so proud of him for that. Like he really has taken on his own really unique style throughout the course of this series, and you can really see the culmination of that part 7. But like there are some things that I prefer even in the old art styles. But in general, I would just say this was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it wasn't even just the faces or the way that he's drawing everyone so detailed, but even like he's always been really good at drawing like landscapes and everything like that. He takes a lot of time and care and patience in drawing places and landmarks and everything, because I think that's something that's very important to him. Is like he loves he kind of loves exploring other places and cultures and parts of the world. But here, which is, I felt like even more like he's really just at his chef's kiss, like pinnacle of his art, I feel like. And maybe it'll get even better in part 8. I don't know, part 9. I know what the main Jojo looks like, and I know like little bits and pieces about future parts, but nothing in context. So, okay. Johnny is such a great main character, and I love the focus on his redemption. Again, I'll say the learning to walk again is so symbolic for putting his own life back together. I love Gyro. I love the effect that they had on each other. A lot of people would argue that Gyro was sort of the main character, and I'm not going to disagree with that. I think Johnny ended up being a really solid main character, but Gyro was a very, very close second, in the same way that like a lot of people argued that Bruno was the real main character part 5. And I totally get that. I totally get it. Gyro had his own really great arc, and I feel like they helped each other so much to heal in their own ways. You know, certainly Gyro is not in the spot that Johnny's in when we encounter them both, but they both had, I feel like, things to work through, and they helped each other. They really like what one was missing or needed help with, the other came in and made up for, you know. Oh my God, we even had his dad come in to make amends. Like that, I never expected to see that. That was so like out of nowhere. And I was just like, oh my God, yes, why not? Why not? Why the heck not? You know? Okay, so I will get into what I feel like a big theme of this part was. I feel like a big theme of this part, and you can let me know if you think that this is right or not. It's just my opinion. I think a lot of it is like about control and fate, and I don't know. I feel like part 5 was also a lot about this concept of fate, but there was something about like, it's like fate that we're bound to, you know, we're bound to fate. There's like things that happen and we just can't change them, but in a different way. Here, I feel like it was a lot more about fate and the idea that like things happen and we can't change them. They happen for a reason. You know, like if you try to take that into your own hands, you're missing out on a lot of the point and purpose of this journey. So it's kind of a different spin on it. You know, an example is we see Valentine is so insistent on taking control of the nation's fate. He's even willing to hurt others, both like those who worked for him, you know, these sacrifices, people he didn't care about killing or getting killed. And also just like the people who he was sending all that damage to in like other places with the corpse and everything. Like he was, I think, missing a lot of the point of like being a decent human being by trying to take control and like protect his country. Even like I can kind of see how like Gyro wanted to understand why Marco, he wanted to understand like, why does he need to be executed? I just want to know why. Like, and in the end, like, we did prevent that, but even then, like, he ended up dying. So there's just like some things that are like beyond our control, maybe, is like what he was trying to get across with that. I don't personally love that one as much. That like he just ended up having to die no matter what. But it does kind of feel like it's one of those things, you know, that, okay, well, we stopped it, but what I still would rather not see him get bad. You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, not the dying of a cold is good, but I don't know. I think maybe there was some kind of like lesson in it. I'm trying to find a lesson in it. So much of their journey was about misfortunes and mistakes and everything that happened along the way and how those ended up leading to their own personal growth and ultimately victories. You know, every time their stand evolved, like Johnny's stand evolved, or like we had some kind of power up, it usually came along with some kind of like deeper understanding of the self, you know, or of like the situation, of the past, you know, of their histories or something. Like, I feel like it was all very linked to them knowing themselves and understanding more than just what they had their sights on, you know, like life is about more than just looking ahead, tunnel vision. Valentine was so intent on controlling, even for what would have been a good reason, and that ultimately led to his demise. So many times, like, okay, so this is where I'm just like, sometimes you just don't understand the bad things that happen. It's not good that bad things happen, but so many times when they had like lost everything during this, that would all just ended up being part of like the journey that led them to somewhere good. And we saw the same thing with Steven Steele. Like, he was at his lowest and he ended up having like the best idea of his whole life, you know, and his whole life was a series of ups and downs. It just kind of like brought him to the next place, you know. I'm sure when he was being, you know, scrutinized for fraud for that story and everything, he wasn't thinking, but this will ultimately lead me to have this great idea about this race, but it did. And so, you know, I know a lot of people hate the like everything happens for a reason kind of thing, but I do feel like a major theme of this world, of this part, was sort of that, not so much that things happen and you're just kind of helpless to them, but that things happen and maybe they do happen for a reason. Maybe you can let them shape you for better or for worse. You know, we saw with Diego, like, his ended up pushing him to a place where like he made really bad decisions, and Sandman too, you know, like, and then we had, you know, I feel like I had written this in here. Yeah, Johnny and Gyro also came in with a lot of baggage and also their own goals and things that they wanted to achieve for themselves, but they had more than just a quest for power or what they were after. They wanted understanding, they wanted purpose, they wanted healing. Like, they were out for more than just one thing. And I think that's why they ended up not missing out on those signs around them. You know what I mean? I already did the comparisons to part 1. So yeah, guys, what did you think? What was your takeaway? You know, do you agree with that? Would you take other things away from it? Do you have other things to add? I would love to know. I'd love to discuss, because like I said, I think once I've had a little bit more time for everything to sit, I will be able to maybe come back and give you even more. Because like this was so clearly one that we could read into. I feel like with so many other parts of JoJo, we kind of build a background for a character or motivations or emotions or something around them after the fact. And maybe that's not something that was necessarily there in the source material. Even if Araki wanted to put it there, it's a matter of like knowing your audience, knowing your time constraints, knowing your editors. Oh my God, this man with his editors, like, go and watch some of the videos on YouTube about part 5 and like the place where he was at mentally doing part 5, because they were just so like choking the life out of his creative spirit at that time. So yeah, so like no fault of his, but like there are times when I feel like we've kind of built up these all these like concepts around a character, like deeper concepts that we didn't necessarily get in the story, and here we actually got that. We actually got people's like deeper meanings and like the journeys, and like it was all about that, and I absolutely love that. I think this is a great example of some of his best work. I can see why everyone says it's peak. I definitely get it now. Back when I was watching part 4 and you guys were like, oh my God, part 7 is the best part, I'm like, what? Like, I can't imagine it getting better than, like, part 3, you know? And I love part 3, don't get me wrong, but God, he outdid himself on this. Yeah, guys, it is a shame we never got to know what really happened to Hot Pants. That part I'm kind of bummed about. I guess she just died. Like, Valentine just said she was a sacrifice. So I'm guessing, like, oh, okay, when she was taking all that glass and everything in her face, I guess she just died. Which is kind of too bad, because I would have loved to have seen her get a little bit more of, like, a redemption, too, but yeah, so that was, like, a little bit of a loose end, but everything else, I feel like he did a really good job of just... There were probably the least amount of loose ends in this one. The only thing we didn't really get was just like, where the heck do they all end up? Like, where is Johnny in like 50 years? And I'm guessing we're gonna get that in part 8. So look forward to that. That'll be coming soon. And I haven't read any of it yet. Like, so I'm a blank slate. I cannot wait to come and share with you my thoughts on that. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this amazing Joe journey. Your comments, your feedback, everything has made this so much more enjoyable for me. I really truly feel like we did this together, especially since we were like, it is very interactive in that, like, you're reading along with me on the screen and everything. I want to say a special thanks to Leonie for editing, many of these by now. I forget how actual many it's been by this point, but like for a while. I could not have done this without her, because everything's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than I thought. I'd never done a manga review, and it ended up being a ton more than I thought it was going to be. And thanks to Leonie, these can go on, because I really don't think they would go on without her. It'd be way too much work. Like, eventually I just have to stop. And so yes, so thank you guys so much. Please join me for part 8 for JoJolian, and we will watch it together. Bye for now, guys.